from International Management Institute, New Delhi. As a part of a project for strategy formulation and implementation, we are making this video. We are going to talk about the Indian pharmaceutical industry, and in a later part, we'll talk about the company Sun Pharma. This project has been done under the guidance of Professor Rajiv Khanna. We have taken this industry because the future of pharma is arriving now. It's time to get on board or risk getting left behind. Now more than ever, it's unfeasible and even dangerous to rely on the projection models of old and predictions of yesterday that are made for the future of pharma industry. Yet, many in the industry have already set forecasts for the next 15 years, but due to the coronavirus pandemic, the pharma sector has reached a crucial tipping point. So let's get started and talk about the Indian pharma industry. The Indian pharmaceutical industry serves as a supplier for more than 50% of the worldwide vaccination demand, which includes 40% of United States and 25% of all the medications in UK. India represents 20% of the worldwide exports in generics. In financial year 2020, Indian pharma exports amounted to US $16.28 billion. The nation's pharma industry was expected to see an expansion at a CAGR of 22.4% over 2015 to 2020, reaching US $55 billion. India remains the second biggest benefactor of the worldwide biotech and pharma workforce. Indian healthcare is one of the fastest growing sectors and is expected to value at US $372 billion by the end of 2022. The generics market is predicted to reach US $27.9 billion by 2020. By financial year 2025, India's biotech industry is assessed to rise up to US $100 billion. Now, let's talk about some of the advantages that India has in the pharmaceutical industry. First, cost effectiveness. Low production costs and investments in R&D enhances the efficiency of Indian pharma organizations, granting them a competitive advantage in the export market. Indian pharma trade is amounted to US $16.28 billion in financial year 2020. India's production costs are 33% lower than in the United States. So, we can say that India's capacity to produce effective, low-priced drugs presents a tremendous business opportunities in the pharmaceutical sector. Second, economic drivers. The changing economic environment will increase the medication and vaccination demand in the country. India has been increasing accessibilities due to expansion by the pharmacies in the rural India, which will result in the growth of the pharmaceutical sector. Third, increasing investments. Increasing investments by private players in R&D and subsequent acquisition act as a major driver for development. In financial year 2019, Indian pharma organizations contributed 8.8% of their sales in R&D. Between 2008 and 2019, the S&P BSE Healthcare Index has grown by 16.72%. In 2019, Indian pharma had 46 merger and acquisitions worth US $1.47 billion. Fourth, policy support. Pharma Vision 2020 aimed at making India a leading innovator in drug manufacturing. Also, in the pharmaceutical sector, 100% FDI is permitted by the government.
Let me take you through a few notable trends in the Indian pharmaceutical sector. Research and development. Indian pharmaceutical companies spend about 8 to 13% of their total turnover on research and development. On July 16, 2020, the DGCI approved their first fully indigenous developed pneumococcal polysaccharide conjugate vaccine, which was made by the Serum Institute of India. This is used for the active immunization against invasive disease and pneumonia caused by Streptococcus pneumoniae in infants. The next thing that we can talk about is increasing exports. Indian pharmaceutical export market is really booming in the recent past, and that can be attributed to its strong presence in the generics space. Pharmaceutical exports from India stood at a shocking $16.28 US billion in the fiscal year 2020. Joint ventures are also another area in which the Indian pharmaceutical sector is leaving its own mark. There are multiple joint ventures and mergers and acquisitions happening, which are bringing the spotlight to the Indian pharmaceutical sector. Some of the examples are mentioned here, such as the one that happened in May 2020 between Jubilant Generics Ltd and the US-based Gilead Sciences, or the one in June 2020 where Syngene International developed its own ELISA antibody testing kits as its research unit in Bengaluru. The most important thing that's happening in the recent past, which is one of the biggest trends in the Indian pharmaceutical sector, is the expansion that is happening by the Indian players. Sun Pharma, as you might all know, entered a global licensing agreement with the Hyderabad-based CSIR, Indian Institute of Chemical Technology. We must look at a few strategies that were adopted in this VUCA environment for dealing COVID-19. We were all underprepared, and the pharmaceutical sector had to really gear up and strategize and implement those strategies in a very short time to, give favorable results. Discussing a few of them here are as follows. The first thing that we need to look at is cost leadership. Now, Sun Pharma is trying to achieve cost leadership by not just vertical integration, which is, complex API, which requires special skills and technology and are developed and scaled up for both API and dosage forms. There are also companies that are going for differentiation, Players in the sector are trying to strengthen their position in the market and expand themselves by investing heavily in R&D activities, such as Dr. Reddy's acquired Octoplus, a Netherlands-based company, to get access to the polylactic co-glycolic acid technology for the formation of complex injectables. If you look at the focus on new markets, Lupin is making inroads into new markets such as Latin America, Russia, and other East European countries. Sun Pharma has decided to focus on specialty and chronic therapies such as neurology, oncology, dermatology segments. India plans to set up nearly 1 lakh crore, which translates to roughly 1.3 billion US dollars, funds to provide boost to companies to manufacture pharmaceutical ingredients domestically. A lot of mergers and acquisitions are also taking place in the recent past. US-based private equity firm KKR acquired about 54% stake in Mumbai-based drug manufacturer JB Chemicals and Pharmaceuticals for rupees 3,100 crores, roughly about 439 million US dollars. Bharat Biotech entered a partnership with the University of Wisconsin-Madison and US-based company Flugen to develop a vaccine, Coroflu, against COVID. In July 2020, PE firm Advent International signed a definitive agreement to acquire controlling stake in Hyderabad-based RA Chem Pharma, a vertically integrated pharmaceutical company promoted by Microlabs.
Now, I'll be talking about the growth drivers of the Indian pharmaceutical sector. Coming to the supply side, Indian patent laws and highly efficient manufacturing processes is a major source of cost advantage for Indian companies. Another advantage is the availability of talented workers. India is one of the major manufacturing hubs for generic drugs and accounts for 20% of all international generic drug exports. India, moreover, has over 120 plants, which represents 22% of the overall US FDA approved plants. Another factor is increasing penetration of chemists. Now, coming to the demand side, some of the factors that affect demand in this sector are increasing fatal diseases, improving accessibility to drugs due to technology, increasing penetration of health insurance, growing number of stress-related diseases due to change in lifestyle, and better availability of diagnostic facilities. Now, coming to the policy drivers. National Health Policy 2015, which focuses on increasing public expenditure on healthcare segment, is a major driving force for this sector. Other factors like reduction in approval time for new facilities, plans to set up pharmaceutical education and research institute are also driving factors. Another policy that becomes a driver for this sector is the price control exemptions to drug manufactured through indigenous research and development under the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Policy 2012. Now I'll be talking more about the supply side drivers of this industry. Many pharmaceutical MNCs in India are anticipated to introduce patented drugs upon the implementation of product patents. Laws and policies that allows export of patented drugs will draw in foreign players to the Indian market. Pharmaceutical firms have invested more on targeting rural markets and providing improved healthcare facilities. The market size of the hospitals is predicted to rise by 200 billion US dollars within 4 years. Medical devices industry is predicted to reach 50 billion US dollars within 5 years with an annual growth rate of 15.2%. India is the largest supplier for generic drugs globally, as it makes up for 20% of the overall global export. About 70% of the Indian pharma sector is comprised of the generic drug market, and it is anticipated to grow to 27.9 billion US dollars in 2020. Within 10 years, almost 120 drugs will have its patent expired, which have an anticipated global revenue between 80 to 250 billion US dollars.
Now we'll talk about the Indian pharmaceutical industry in terms of the pestle analysis. On the political front, the Indian government has launched various healthcare policies and schemes like Ayushman Bharat and CGHS and many others, which have motivated the public to visit medical facilities for their ailments as well as increase the customer base for pharmaceutical companies. Recent initiatives like Pharma Vision 2020 and Make in India have boosted the growth of pharmaceutical manufacturers and also the use of local ingredients in drug production. The government owns various pharmaceutical companies like IDBL, HAL, and BCPL, which operate in various parts of the country. There is a high level of bureaucracy in this industry, which can be seen in the number of boards and regulations which need to be crossed before a product can be successfully launched into the market. On the economic front, we can see that the industry is highly attractive for FDIs and joint ventures. This is partly due to a significantly lower cost of production as compared to first world countries like USA, Germany, and the UK. The government has only allotted 1.6% of the GDP for national healthcare. However, in the pharmaceutical industry, in the last year, we saw more than 40 mergers and acquisitions, which were close to a $1.5 billion cumulative worth. On the social aspect, we can observe two different trends. Firstly, is the health conscious trend amongst the younger generations, which is highly sensitive towards healthcare and wellness and have uh, trended towards the purchase of supplements, immunity boosters, and other wellness drugs. On the other hand, there is also an increase in the level of stress and depression in the recent demographics. And this has resulted in a lot of ailments and addictions which need to be treated medically and require pharmaceuticals. So, from a technological point of view, uh, with the advent of Industry 4.0, the end-term customer experience has increased drastically. Nowadays, the common public can self-diagnose through websites, chatbots, and various other tools to identify their problems and get recommendations for drugs to use. Not only that, the pharmaceutical companies can also now directly market to the customer through various social media campaigns, mobile apps, websites, etc. Automation and data mining have also helped the manufacturing industry in R&D, production, and even in sales of drugs like customer profiling and logistics. Environmental perspective, increasing levels of pollution, population, as well as the deteriorating quality of our climate has caused various diseases which need urgent care and attention. This also is a opportunity for the pharmaceutical industry. Uh, Also, global pandemics like the COVID-19 call for immediate use of pharmaceuticals and various medical products. Moving on towards legislative. So, in India, the Central Drug Standard Control Organization (CDSCO) is the Indian counterpart of the FDA in America. There also exist various laws for controlling drugs in the Indian market, as well as for protecting the customer rights and also for production of various chemical substances. Now we'll talk about the Porter's 5 force analysis for this industry. There is a low threat of entrance because there exist high barriers to entry. This is because there are pre-existing players who have well-developed production and R&D capabilities, and a new player would not have the capital to deal with that. Not only that, these international players exist in almost every country and have a strong base. Bargaining power of buyers is low. There do exist influencers who have a high control over this power, like hospitals, doctors, and pharmacies. However, the end-term customer, which is the common public, does not have much of a say in what drugs are subscribed to them or what they cost. Bargaining power of suppliers. In the Indian context, this is considerably low because there exist many suppliers of raw materials used for pharmaceutical drugs. If the terms and conditions of one supplier do not comply with one pharma company, the pharma company may easily switch to another supplier. Set of substitutes. Uh, this threat can be moderate to high depending on what kind of drugs the pharmaceutical company deals in. In terms of generic drugs, there do exist a lot of alternatives like homeopathy, Ayurveda, etc. However, in terms of more serious illnesses, there is limited scope. The customer, however, may as well choose not to go to one specific industry like the pharmaceutical industry and go towards homeopathy or yoga or Ayurveda. Intensity of rivalry. This final force is also high because there exists a lot of big players in the industry, and it is a race towards who can develop the new drug the fastest. Hence, there are high R&D costs, and whoever can spend the most usually wins.
Sun Pharmaceutical Industries Ltd is an Indian multinational pharmaceutical company headquartered in Mumbai. It manufactures and sells pharmaceutical formulations and active pharmaceutical ingredients primarily in India and the United States. The company offers formulations in various therapeutic areas such as cardiology, psychiatry, neurology, gastroenterology, and diabetology. Sun Pharmaceuticals was established by Mr. Dilip Shangvi in 1983 in Vapi, Gujarat, with 5 products to treat psychiatry ailments. Cardiology products were introduced in 1987, followed by gastroenterology products in 1989. Today, it's the largest chronic prescription company in India and a market leader in psychiatry, neurology, cardiology, and several more. The acquisition of Tranvaxi made Sun the largest pharma company in India, the largest pharma company in the US, and the fourth largest specialty generic company globally. Over 72% of Sun Pharma sales are from markets outside India, primarily in the United States. The US is the single largest market, accounting for about 50% of their turnover. In all formulations or finished dosage forms, account for 93% of their turnover. Manufacturing is across 26 locations, including plants in the US, Canada, Brazil, Mexico, and Israel. In the United States, the company markets a large basket of generics with a strong pipeline awaiting approval from the US Food and Drug Administration. It was listed on the stock exchange in 1994 in an issue oversubscribed 55 times. The founding family continues to hold a majority stake in the company. Sun Pharma has complemented growth with selected acquisitions over the last 2 decades. In 2010, the company acquired a large stake in Taro for pharmaceuticals, among the largest generic derma companies in the US, with operations across Canada and Israel. The company currently owns 69% stake in Taro for about $260 million. In 2011, Sun Pharma entered into a joint venture with MSD to bring complex or differentiated generics to emerging markets. In 2012, Sun announced acquisitions of two US companies, Tucer Pharmaceuticals, a dermatology device company, and a generic pharma company, URL Pharma. In 2013, the company announced an R&D joint venture for ophthalmology with a research company in Rexon. In 2014, Sun Pharma announced that it would acquire 100% of Rand Vaccine Laboratories Ltd in an all-stock transaction valued at $4 billion. Later, in 2015, they acquired Insight Vision ophthalmologic portfolio. In 2016, they acquired Biosynthesis in Russia. In 2018, they entered Japan and acquired 14 brands from Novartis, and they proceeded to acquire Polar Pharma in Japan in 2019. So, talking about their long-term growth drivers. One, they always create sustainable revenue streams. They enhance share of specialty businesses globally, achieve differentiation by focusing on technically complex products. They focus on key markets and achieve critical mass in those markets. They're speedy to market, and they ensure sustained compliance with global regulatory standards. They also maintain cost leaderships by optimizing their operation costs and vertically integrating their operations. They balance profitability and investments for future by increasing contribution of specialty and complex products and future investments directed towards differentiated products. For their business development, they use acquisitions to bridge critical capability gaps, focus on access to products, technology, and market presence, and ensure that their acquisitions yield high return on investment. They also are known to focus on payback timelines.
India is home to more than 3,000 pharmaceutical companies with a strong network of over 10,000 manufacturing facilities. The domestic pharmaceutical market turnover reached 20.3 billion in 2019, up 9.3% from 2018. Sun Pharma is currently the country's top performing pharma brand, having a market share of 8.2%. It is the market leader in chronic segment and have a strong positioning in acute segment. The company specializes in technically complex products and offers a complete therapy basket. It has a significant 31 brands among the country's top 300 pharma brands. Now, here are the top pharmaceutical companies in India according to their market share, which is topped by Sun Pharma, followed by Abbott Novo, then Cipla, then Zydus and Biochem, and which is followed by Lupin and Mankind and so on. The company's high performance can be clearly seen with the help of this graph at left, showing a tremendous increase in sales at a CAGR of 19% since 2010, which is much higher than the industry average of CAGR of around 9 to 10%. Also, the graph to the right shows the breakup of sales among its therapeutic formulations, where cardiology is having the highest percentage share of 18%, followed by neuropsychiatry, and least being urology and ophthalmology. Now, here we have the financial statements of the company with their year-on-year growth percentages to measure and trace the company's performance. Now, highlighting a few matrices, we can see that the company is in a constant state of growth, which is evident from its sales data, profit data, following the EBITDA and the cash flow figures, having a CAGR of more than 17% in each case.
Now we'll be doing a SWOT analysis of Sun Pharma. Starting with strengths, the company has a strong global footprint, being ranked number 9 worldwide and having a presence in over 100 countries. It is a market leader in India and has strong growth in emerging markets worldwide. The company has a sales force of 12,000 plus employees and also has production facilities in 40 plus sites across US and India. It is a low debt company, which means it is great for investors and has a high solvency rate. Weaknesses, the company is limited by its presence in Latin America and Europe. It has also had run-ins with regulatory bodies like FDA in America. Another limited restriction put upon the company is by the NPPA, in which the regulatory body has reduced the price point for various of its drugs, affecting its profit margins. Opportunities for Sun Pharma include mergers and acquisitions, especially given the post-COVID scenario where many small and medium businesses would be dying out. This would be an ideal time for acquiring new facilities for production and logistics. The company can also integrate into production of raw materials for drug production. The increasing health awareness across world and people giving more attention to wellness has become an avenue for pharmaceutical industries like Sun Pharma to market directly to the end customer. India also has high potential for becoming a pharmaceutical giant, in which the market leader in India, which is Sun Pharma, might also stand to gain. Threats. The company faces its biggest threat from its competitors. Since the pharmaceutical industry is a major avenue for R&D, it is always a rat race for who can develop the next greatest drug. Another threat for the company is exposure to fluctuations in the exchange rate, since most of its business is in America and other foreign countries. Stringent regulations exist in the pharmaceuticals market, which can also be a threat for a pharmaceutical company like Sun Pharma. This has been Group 1. Thank you for watching.